In the early 20th century, scientists have created a mixture of technology and sorcery known as Machinart, circuits made from spells that are put into objects to bring them to life and give them artificial intelligence. These automatons were developed as a military weapon and spread throughout the world, and the humans in charge of them became known as puppeteers. One such puppeteer is Raishin, whose automaton's name is Yaya, and they take upon themselves to save everyone by stopping a train using Yaya's brute strength, enhanced even more by Raishin's mana. Shortly after arriving at the academy, Raishin takes a transfer admission test, only to do poorly and receive a miserable ranking of second to last. As Raishin becomes depressed over his future prospects, Professor Kimberly appears before them and introduces herself as their teacher. As they discuss about the Walpurgis night, a party where the top 100 students battle to become the wise men, Kimberly informs Raishin that despite his poor grades, he can still gain access to the night party if he defeats any contestant within the 100 ranks and takes their place. She is, however, surprised at Raishin's determination to become the wise man and reminds him to work hard. While looking for their dormitory, Raishin and Yaya stumble across the girls' dorm where they encounter Charlotte and her automaton dragon Sigmund. After an unpleasant first encounter with the two, they finally arrive at the male dormitory, Tortoise Hall. The next morning, Charlotte and Sigmund take a walk around school, only to be met with terrified students who avoid their paths. Upon seeing this, Sigmund reminds Charlotte to make friends in lieu of the terrifying reputation she has in school, but she refuses because she believes everyone is her opponent. Just then, Raishin and Yaya appear before them and challenge them to a duel, which Charlotte accepts. However, Sigmund is attacked by several other students and their automatons. In the nick of time, she's saved by Raishin, who catches her, while Yaya quickly blocks the next attack. The four of them then work together to defeat their foes. Afterwards, Raishin decides to discontinue their original duel due to Sigmund's injuries. Later that night, a mysterious figure devours on something before leaping away, leaving behind a partly devoured automaton. The next day, as Raishin, Charlotte, and their respective automatons are having lunch together, Raishin unexpectedly spots Magnus taking a stroll with two of his automatons. Instantly, Raishin has flashbacks of his family members in a burning house. Intending to confront Magnus, Raishin orders Yaya to go out, to which she does so by breaking through the glass window. As Raishin leaps out of the window, Charlotte tries to stop him, but to no avail. Jumping out of the broken window, Charlotte and Sigmund see Raishin confronting Magnus. However, as one of Magnus' automatons defends him, Raishin catches a glimpse of her face and is reminded of his sister, Nadeshiko. Before Magnus and his automatons leave, Raishin stops them, intending to pass a white bottle to him, only to be surrounded by 6 automatons with their swords pointing at him. Meanwhile, Charlotte silently thinks about how Magnus is the greatest genius in the academy. Undeterred, Raishin smirks and smoothly passes the bottle to one of the automatons, which Magnus accepts and walks away. Yaya then apologizes for her inability to protect him earlier on. Back in his dormitory room, he quietly accepts that he's unable to defeat Magnus. The next day, the duo encounter Felix, the head of the disciplinary committee and member of the rounds. As Raishin leaves, Felix says he would like to discuss a deal with him after class and hints he would offer an entry into the Walpurgis night as a reward. After class, Charlotte notices Raishin speaking to Felix, while Sigmund asks if she's ready to defeat them, now that they have saved her before. Proclaiming her pride as a Baloo family member, she states she's determined to defeat anyone. In an office, Felix briefs Raishin about the perpetrator, Candy, who has devoured several automatons and is related to the disappearance of some students. He comments that as Raishin is a new student, he cannot be suspected of being the perpetrator, and moreover, he's a capable fighter. Thus, he wants Raishin to defeat Candy. Suddenly, Grisette, the vice head of the disciplinary committee, enters the office and informs that another partially devoured automaton has been found. At the crime scene, Raishin notices that the victim's magic circuit is missing, where Felix explains it's the perpetrator's modus operandi. Feeling scared, Charlotte leaves the scene despite Raishin's attempt to stop her. Seeing the sense of fear amongst top students, he finally agrees to investigate this case. Later, Rosette and Raishin walk to the school gardens, where Rosette privately discusses her suspicions for the case, commenting that Sigmund is a band doll who once committed atrocities, but Rosette believes that Candy uses a band doll as well. Back in his room, Raishin tells Yaya that they will start their investigation. Just then, Charlotte appears below his room's window and asks for a date, which he accepts. The next morning, Charlotte claims that her suggestion of a date is actually a bait to attract Candy. Reminding Charlotte that she suggested a date, Raishin takes her out on an actual date, despite her protests. Seeing them leave, Yaya cries out of jealousy. During the date, Raishin and Charlotte explore the town as they begin to know each other better. Charlotte is shocked to find out that Raishin has only pursued puppetry for 2 years, yet he aims to become the wise man. After dinner, she remarks that Felix is a treasured friend who's looking out for her, because she's been making enemies in school unknowingly. Thus, she believes that accepting Felix's dates would increase the number of enemies she has. Additionally, she has her own motivations to become the wise man. As they return to the school gate, they are surprised to see a crowd of students and realize Candy has struck again. Worrying for Yaya's safety, Raishin dashes off, leaving Charlotte behind. Felix then informs him that Candy has devoured another victim. Raishin recalls that the latest victim was one of Charlotte's attackers. Troubled, she leaves the scene but is warned by Felix not to investigate the case. Moreover, he claims not wanting to see her anymore, hurting her, so she runs away. Returning to his dormitory room, Raishin explains he went out with Charlotte for investigation purposes. Noting how Sigmund could produce similar wounds as Candy did to its previous victims, she would have an alibi by going out with him. However, this cannot prove her innocence, as the timing of the latest attack is too coincidental to their date, and since Sigmund is a banned doll, he has a limited amount of mana. Just then, Raishin receives a call from Rosette, informing him that Charlotte has not returned to her dormitory, and realizes she's not with Raishin too. Concerned, Raishin leaves to look for her, but Shoko and Aurori turn up unexpectedly. Shoko warns Raishin that Candy is a tough opponent, and adds that even the Japanese military is unable to identify him, linking suspicion that the British royalty could be involved as well. However, Raishin is determined not to give up on the case, as he does not want to abandon Charlotte. Calling Yaya over, Shoko knocks her unconscious for a few seconds. She explains that she has just unbound Yaya and teaches him that despite Yaya's strength, he cannot ignore the laws of causality, as Yaya has her own specific weaknesses. With that knowledge, Raishin and Yaya leave while Aurori asks Shoko if the two will be okay. Shoko replies saying Raishin is not that weak and Yaya has been unbounded. Recalling what happened years ago, Shoko and Yaya arrived at the burnt house of the Akabane clan, where they came across Raishin struggling to master puppetry. When he asked for their identities, Yaya revealed the Karyusei mark on her, which he recognized instantly. The flashback ends and Aurori asks Shoko if Raishin could defeat Tenzin, and she says that if Raishin found out about the truth, he would hate her too. Meanwhile, Raishin and Yaya encounter Rosette, who inform them that the disciplinary committee is looking for Charlotte, as they found a large number of circuits in her room. Having asked for Rosette's cooperation, they reach the locker, but Yaya is told to wait outside. She then unlocks the locker where Felix's automaton is kept, but Raishin suddenly snatches her key and dashes away. Having found the locker of Rosette's automaton, White Mist, he unlocks it and is shocked to see the real Rosette. Without warning, fake Rosette attacks him. As the alarm is raised, Rosette quickly locks the locker and frames Raishin as an accomplice of Candy. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Sigmund have found the lurking automaton and they attack it. Unexpectedly, Felix appears, announcing the evidence they have against her, proclaiming that she's Candy. Back at the locker, Kimberly notices that Yaya seems to be regaining consciousness, and realizing Yaya is about to release her mana, she tells everyone to get down. As Yaya releases her mana in an explosion, she breaks free from her shackles and lets out a scream, gaining the attention of the disciplinary committee. Now, with no one around, Felix explains to Charlotte that their friendship is a facade, as he is more interested in becoming the wise man, so he took advantage of how Sigmund's gram is similar to his own predator circuit. The truth that he's actually Candy, causing her to break down into tears. Right before Felix attempts to finish her off, Raishin and Yaya appear to defend her. Now having to face Felix and his automaton, Raishin has a flashback where Yaya tells him of Charlotte's family background. The Baloo family was once known for their automatons, and they considered everyone as family. However, one day, Charlotte's canine automaton bit a young prince, so the royal family punished the Baloo family severely. Subsequently, Charlotte's parents and sister disappeared too. Yaya then explains Charlotte's dream is to bring the Baloo family back together again, thus saving her scholarship for this goal. Back to the present, Raishin is resolved to battle Felix. However, Felix lies that Charlotte is Candy, but Raishin defends her and is determined to show her that fake Rosette is connected to Felix. After an attack from Yaya, the mask of the doll breaks, revealing her face, shocking Charlotte. The doll then reveals her real name is actually Eliza. Raishin foolishly asks if she's willing to not battle, but she just insults him. Regardless, they battle and Eliza transforms herself into water, causing Raishin to wonder if Eliza can use the magic she has devoured from her victims. Now frustrated that Yaya manages to protect Raishin despite Eliza's attacks, Felix orders Eliza to use a flail, successfully hitting Raishin. Meanwhile, Magnus and his squadron watch the battle from a roof alongside Kimberly. Magnus believes he gave too many clues, so the battle's outcome is already decided. He then warns Kimberly about leaving too many clues, citing it will interfere with her investigation. Back at the battle, Yaya gets tied up by the flail's imbued chains, and she gets slammed to the ground. Raishin then activates more mana, but Charlotte begs him to stop as he might actually die. Assuring her that it's fine, he proclaims he will defend her even when the world is against them. Eventually, Yaya lunges and causes Eliza's armor to crack. However, Eliza counters with Rizette's white mist, a corrosive mist, and suspends Yaya in it. She then punches the mist to the ground, and Eliza is forced to return to her normal form. As such, Eliza struggles to stand and pick up her sword, but with Raishin's final command, Yaya defeats her, causing her to disintegrate. Felix then becomes desperate, but is finally knocked out by Raishin. With the battle over, it's revealed Shoko Nairori was actually watching the battle. As Magnus prepares to leave, Kimberly recalls the conversation she had with Raishin on entering the Walpurgis night, and Magnus says Raishin might be the dark horse. He then pulls out the bottle of ashes Raishin gave him the other day and explains the meaning behind it, making Kimberly curious to know if they're mortal enemies. Afterwards, the Academy organizes a ceremony to award Raishin his pair of gauntlets into the night party. However, Raishin doesn't understand all the fuss, so Kimberly explains the headmaster held the ceremony to lower the suspicions surrounding the Academy. Amidst the students' cheers, Charlotte presents him with a defensive talisman that has been imbued with magic. Now as friends, Charlotte and Yaya promise to fight their hardest against each other, while Raishin suggests he might have to hold his punches. After winning their battle, Raishin and Yaya are surprised to see a girl caught by a trap in their room. Regardless, they free the girl, but Raishin figures out that it was her that made the trap. Next, the girl enters the bathroom and soaks herself before lying on his bed to try and bait him. Confused, Raishin questions her intentions, where she says she will destroy him. Charlotte then explains the mysterious girl is Frey and is currently ranked 99th, making her Raishin's first opponent during the battle festival. Although Raishin is dead last, he defeated Felix, so Charlotte admits everyone is nervous about him. They then watch on as Frey ends up being accidentally trapped again. Shortly after, her brother Loki arrives to warn Raishin that puppeteers have taken notice of him for beating Felix and Eliza, and that it would be in his best interest to withdraw from the festival, but of course he refuses. Later, Raishin falls asleep in class and gets hit in the head, but Kimberly explains the format and battle dynamics of the event, causing him to wonder if Frey wants to be the wise man that bad. Meanwhile, a man looks over the academy from a rooftop and tells Frey of his high hopes. He then presents a photo to her where Frey asks about a particular promise and is greatly motivated by his assurance to fulfill it. At night, Raishin wakes up from a dream only to discover Frey lying next to him in bed. Turning on the lights, Yaya is instantly raging with jealousy. Upon unzipping her suit, he uncovers a hidden dagger, but Yaya attacks him instead. The next morning, Charlotte explains E-Works, an automaton manufacturer, who's the benefactor of Frey and Loki. Thus, they may be using the festival night as a testing ground for Cherubim and Loki. She then reminds him of the defensive talisman she gave him and leaves. Suddenly, Raishin is attacked by an uncontrollable Rabbi. Shoving Frey away, Rabbi lunges at him, who quickly throws a stun grenade at it, causing it to calm down. As Frey tends to his wounds, he asks why she wants to clap him. Before she could respond, a jealous Yaya wants his order to end her instead. As such, Frey and Rabbi escape. Afterwards, Komurasaki, Yaya's younger sister, shows up signaling to Raishin that they are being sent on a reconnaissance mission. Unfortunately, Yaya can't come as Komurasaki is only allowed to take him with her. Regardless, they reach an orphanage, and there they discover puppies. Upon picking a lock, they enter a dark room apparently occupied by someone Raishin senses. Back at the academy, Yaya seeks Sigmund's counsel and company, expressing her desire to be a human girl. The dragon points out that if she was a human, she would be too weak to protect Raishin. Hearing this, Yaya claims to accept her identity as a doll, but she starts destroying school property. Suddenly, a large projectile is shot at her. Stigmund rushes to Yaya's aid while Kimberly watches the scene unfolding from a higher platform and asks Shoko Karise if she would repair her. Instead, Shoko does not repair and postpones their parent-teacher meeting as well. Leaving, she assures her that both Yaya and Raishin are not weak and requests Kimberly to send her regards to Father Time. Back at the orphanage, the dog asks the duo of their intentions for being there and explains she can see them despite the magical spell. It's then revealed that her name is Yomi and confirms she's indeed a banned doll. Regardless, he invites her to be their guide and explains that Frey wants to assassinate him. Yomi is rudely shocked by this, but warns them about the hell they will soon see. Meanwhile, in school, Yaya desperately wants Raishin, as she cannot be healed in normal fashion. Charlotte then shows up and opens up her kimono, but is stunned to see she has more flesh than Sigmund, confirming she is also a banned doll. Meanwhile, Kimberly enters Dr. Cruel's clinic, where Cruel describes his observations and suspects Yaya as a banned doll. Nevertheless, Kimberly requests for him to mark Raishin, so the Academy and British government will become his enemies. She then threatens him will be shot by a sniper if he declines. Yome then reveals how Frey's real parents were destroyed by a berserk automaton. Raishin then remarks that regardless of the circumstances, Frey is fortunate to have a loving family like Yomi, making the latter smile. The duo are then surprised to see siblings until Yome clarifies they are actually promised children, a very rare group of humans with special mana affinity. Soon alarm bells start ringing where Yomi tells them that all of the Garm series can detect them, but Raishin decides they will force their way through. However, Yomi directs them to a garbage disposal chute as an escape route. She then explains that if Frey loses, the Garm series will be suspended and the Garm automatons will be disposed of. As such, the Angel series, including Cherubim, will be recommended instead. Meanwhile in school, Yaya thanks Charlotte for healing her. As they discuss the ballistic projectile, she cries out for Raishin but stumbles as Frey overhears them. In the midst of battle, Yomi takes a hit for him. After hitting their attackers, he desperately urges Yomi to survive and asks why she protected him. Raishin then tries to rescue Yomi, but she bites his injured shoulder to force him to let go. Thus, she falls and a powerful explosion occurs. At the Academy, Loki tells Frey that he and their father have taken steps to eliminate Raishin and Yaya. However, Raishin appears and he apologizes to Frey about Yomi's demise. However, she thanks him and is glad that Yomi has finally been freed. Returning to his room, Shoko emerges and asks about what happened, where she also tells him that even if he had Yaya, he wouldn't have been able to save them all. She also adds that if the British government used the sonic magic circuit, Japan would have to take action. She then instructs him to steal Rabi's magic circuit. Later, the night party officially commences and Raishin and Loki face off in an intense battle. Annoyed with Yaya's durability, Loki orders Cherubim to revolve into its sword form, which Yaya dodges. After a few more dodges, Raishin finally transfers mana to her, but suddenly recalls how Yomi died for him. Worried that Yaya will face the same fate, he switches places with her and takes the hit, causing Yaya to scream for him. Now wounded by Cherubim, Raishin recalls how he had left home despite Nadeshiko's pleas for him to stay. Yaya then frantically begs him to wake up while Loki leaves the arena. Later, Loki explains to Father the reason for not taking Raishin's gauntlet. However, for dropping to 99th place on purpose, Father threatens to stop his heart if he ever acts on his own accord again. As medics carry Raishin into the operating theater, the gang wait outside. Just then, Irori makes a surprise appearance and slaps Yaya to calm her down. She reminds her to have faith in him as he wouldn't give up until he defeats his older brother Tenzin. Hours later, Charlotte wakes up only to be informed that Raishin still has not regained consciousness. Meanwhile, Kimberly inquires about Raishin's condition, where Cruel says he's a lucky boy, but his life hangs on the balance. The next evening, Frey appeared to battle Loki, and despite his doubts, Frey insists she would actually fight. Just as Cherubim is about to end Rabi, the dog absorbs an overwhelming mana from Frey and quickly attacks back. Stigman explains Rabi is forcefully taking mana from Frey, who has now collapsed to the ground. Once Loki instructs Cherubim to stop, Rabi still pounces onto him. Charlotte then rushes in, but Kimberly stops them, reassuring them that someone is taking care of it. Raishin and Yaya arrive in time to kick Rabi off Loki. Raishin then tells Loki he will save both his sister and her dog, and transfers mana to Yaya. However, Rabi is too fast, but Loki uses Cherubim to block him. With Rabi cornered, Raishin finally successfully knocks Frey out. At the hospital wing, Raishin thanks Shoko for responding to his request for help. Inside the operating theater, Shoko lays out her metal chain. She then instructs Irori to help her while she unravels her surgical tools. She also asks Kimberly to snip a locket of Frey's hair. After completing the surgery, Shoko reveals she has a small part of Rabi's magic circuit, thus fulfilling the wishes of the Japanese military without costing his life. However, she warns Raishin that Rabi's odds of survival are small. She also explains that Frey was the one who went berserk by sending too much mana. Moreover, Frey's heart is actually mechanized, designed to forcibly extract mana from her body. Now making sense of the bodies he saw in the orphanage, Raishin becomes enraged, but Shoko forbids him from leaving as Bronson is too powerful for him. Later, Raishin encounters Frey has woken up and is stroking Rabi's fur. Listening to how Frey keeps blaming herself, Raishin becomes angry and tells her to stop. Upon leaving, he asks if he's an idiot, where Yaya says yes, he totally is. Afterwards, Charlotte tries to stop them from heading to the orphanage. Thanks to Komurasaki's magic, they sneak into the orphanage successfully, but discover the couch is now empty. However, they are ambushed by some automatons. Without warning, Cherubim, as a huge sword, comes swinging down and Loki appears, furious that Raishin is always involved. With Loki saving them from magical ambush, Frey is informed by Charlotte that he has left for the orphanage, which surprises her. Meanwhile, Charlotte is worried that Kimberly may find out about Ration's absence, but the professor enters with a dark cloak. She offers to bring both girls to the orphanage, provided they obey her rules, and as such, Frey accepts. Back at the battle, Cherubim attacks the guards, leaving everyone confused to his allegiance. They then escape to a nearby building while Cherubim protects them. After an argument, the two boys realize they are actually fighting on the same side. When their enemies are defeated, Ration and Yaya notice a gigantic golden sword in the air, which Loki reveals its name as Lucifer. A man then appears and Ration figures out he's Bronson, the founder of D-Works. The battle then commences where Bronson delivers devastating blows to the two. Loki then confronts Bronson for betraying his sister, where Bronson reveals that he used some tricks, causing their parents' deaths. Now enraged, Loki releases his mana, but Bronson easily punches him down. Meanwhile, noticing that Ration is still able to move, he turns his attention to him. As such, Loki takes the chance to escape, allowing the boys to regroup. Ration then furiously confronts Bronson, who answers by saying he was willing to do anything at Frey's expenses. Infuriated, Ration releases mana to Yaya, and Cherubim joins the battle as well. Much to Bronson's surprise, Yaya uses explosives to cause the accumulated heat in Lucifer's blades to disperse. With that, he orders Yaya to use Final Whistle. His Agi sword glint, and thus Lucifer is defeated. However, both boys collapse due to their injuries. Luckily, in the nick of time, Kimberly throws a dagger at Bronson, forcing him to discharge and drop the gun. Denouncing the man's crimes, Kimberly has her fellow mages arrest him. The next morning in the hospital ward, Loki has had enough of a flirtatious Yaya. Frey then enters the room along with Rabbi and 4 new canine automatons, and she thanks Loki for protecting everyone. But Ration's cheeky comment triggers another battle between the boys, but Frey mentions that Ration may be part of their family in the future. Everyone is stunned, so Frey runs out of the room. Angry, Loki and Yaya confront Ration, but he too quickly escapes to the roof where Frey finds him, and she apologizes for Loki hitting Yaya previously. Encouraged by her determination to be a wise man, Ration mentions he looks forward to battling her. As she leaves, he realizes he hasn't seen Charlotte, and when looking out in front, he notices someone looking like her, who appears about ready to jump off. Acting quickly, he manages to grab her hand and asks the girl if she's alright, but she runs behind the bushes and suggests that he end her. Meanwhile, Yaya attacks Ration out of warped jealousy again. Suddenly, the Academy's clock tower is destroyed by a huge blast, and amidst the smoke, the Dew spot Charlotte and Sigmund flying from the scene. Moments earlier, the Academy was celebrating the centennial of the clock tower's construction, and before the headmaster began his speech, Charlotte and Sigmund suddenly attack the tower. Back at the hospital ward, Yaya watches with jealousy as Frey helps to dress Ration's wounds. Hearing a description of the girl, Frey deduces it is Henriette, Charlotte's little sister who recently transferred, who's already been saved 6 times. Furthermore, Charlotte has been missing since the night before. Alarmed, Ration approaches Cruel for permission to be discharged, knowing that he would not be fully recovered for the night party. Regardless, Cruel lets him go, and a while later, they are joined by Frey as she offers her help in finding Charlotte. Meanwhile, a young man informs Ravenna to find Ration, while also reminding her that she has a deadline to meet. At the snap of his fingers, they reveal their real identities as Charlotte and Sigmund. Immediately, they fly off to find Ration as instructed. A short while later, the group manage to find Henriette. However, she refuses to disclose information with regards to Charlotte's disappearance. Instead, Ration is misunderstood by Yaya and Frey as a weirdo, while Henriette escapes. He then decides that Frey should prepare herself for the night party. Suddenly, Charlotte appears. She then warns him to stay out of their affairs or risks being ended, and quickly flies away. Recalling how Henriette appeared at her dormitory a week ago, Charlotte becomes determined. After waiting at the night party, Ration and Yaya are surprised that their opponent, the 87th ranked participant, has not shown up. Soon the night party is declared over for the night. Back in their dormitory room, Henriette considers destroying herself but is stopped by Charlotte, reassuring her they will live together again. Unbeknownst to them, a man is seen spying on them. Back at Kimberly's office, the professor informs Ration that Charlotte is most likely attempting to destroy the headmaster. They then discuss the King's Fort family potentially manipulating Charlotte, but she warns him not to take action without evidence. However, she agrees that as long as they have evidence, they can act upon it. The next morning during breakfast, the pair overhear cynical rumors about Charlotte and Ration, compelling him to leave the cafeteria. Just then, he notices Henriette running towards the ruins of the clock tower, where the headmaster is as well. Realizing what would happen next, he dashes towards the girl while instructing Yaya to contact Shoko, Without warning, Charlotte and Sigmund attack the area, but fail to notice Henriette and Ration are there too. In an attempt to protect Henriette from Sigmund's line of fire, Ration dashes towards her, intending to push her away. However, before he could reach her, Sigmund's attack obliterates the ground, causing them to fall into darkness. Yaya then attempts to follow Ration, but is stopped by Kimberly, who warns her that she is being watched. Meanwhile, Shin escorts Charlotte back to Cedric, who lashes out at Charlotte for the roundabout approach of her assassination attempt. On the other hand, Ration and Henriette navigate the underground, and while resting, they find common ground as both were considered to be inferior siblings. Afterwards, they later encounter Magnus and one of his automata who resembles Nadeshiko, as well as Rutherford. However, Shin attacks Ration, but Magnus's automaton intervenes and forces Shin to retreat. Back on the surface, Ration is reunited with Yaya, where they head back to their dorm, where Ration tells Yaya that his late parents had actually arranged for a marriage for him. That night, Ration's opponent for the night festival fails to show up for the third straight night, so he devises a plan to draw out the conspirators by kidnapping Henriette. However, Cedric then orders Shin to retrieve Henriette and to dispose of Ration, while Cedric tortures Charlotte as a way to satisfy Felix. Thus, Shin approaches Ration and engages him in battle. Shin is able to wound Ration, but he retreats due to the unexpected appearance and assistance of Loki and Frey. Meanwhile, back at the infirmary, Henriette tells Ration that she is the one at fault for letting the automaton that attacked the Prince of Wales go rogue, and also tells him that she had been trying to destroy herself so that Charlotte would not be burdened with her life. Meanwhile, Sigmund begs Charlotte to stop the assassination attempt, but Ration arrives to tell her that killing Rutherford will make her dream of restoring her Blues family status impossible. However, unable to see things Ration's way, Sigmund and Yaya begin to fight. Ration then knocks Charlotte off Sigmund, where he finally convinces her to stop the assassination attempt. Unfortunately, Shin appears and calls himself a divine being called a Machine Doll for being able to operate without a puppeteer supplying him magic. A flashback then occurs where Shoko gave Ration a new lease on life on the condition that he must destroy Tenzin or else she will use his body parts to build an automaton. Back in the present, before Ration fights Shin, Charlotte tells Frey the truth about her situation to keep Ration from putting himself in danger. However, during the battle, Ration gets Shin to attack from behind where Yaya is waiting for him. Thus, she slams Shin into a brick wall and repeatedly throws punches to immobilize him, allowing Sigmund to follow up by firing his luster cannon. Shin dodges the attack, thereby confirming the presence of his puppeteer, as he could not have dodged the attack without a puppeteer resupplying him with magic. As such, Frey locates Cedric, while Yaya activates her final stronghold ability to defeat Shin. Then, when Cedric and Shin retreat, Cedric reveals herself to actually be the 87th ranked puppeteer, Alice Bernstein. Having watched the battle from a distance, Kimberly warns Magnus that as Tenzin, he is being closely watched and that manufacturing human life is magic's greatest taboo. The next day, Ration recovers in the infirmary and the girls stir up a big commotion over Ration's presumed preference over girls with large chests, which greatly upsets Charlotte. Suddenly, Kimberly drops by to inform Ration that the clock tower will be rebuilt using the Ballou family fortune that was confiscated and frozen following the incident, and that Henriette's enrollment has been voided, but that she will remain at the academy as Cruel's lab assistant. After everybody but Yaya leaves, Yaya expresses her concern about having to face her friends, but Ration maintains his optimism, which Yaya interprets as a declaration of love.